Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the first Broadcast Legends event of 2024. I'm Len Shapiro. I'm on the board of directors of Broadcast Legends, and I'm substituting today for Peter Cleveland, our president, esteemed president, who is home under the weather. So let's get this started here. We're going to get Steve Cushman up to talk a little bit about what's going on at California Historical Radio Society. He has one big news that's really going to help the program. And Steve, why don't you come up here and start telling us about CHRS.
Hello. As everybody, I won't keep you long. I just wanted to remind you that our associated organization with the Legends, you know, they do the social part of broadcasting history, and we do the historical part of what we're doing. And our building down at 2152 Central Avenue in Alameda is our new museum and wireless discovery center, and we're doing a lot of new things with CHRS. We're having a Speaker of the Month series where we will have this month is Jennifer Waits, the radio survivor, and the month after that is going to be an evening with James Gabbert, and then we're going to have Dan Healy, and then in June we're going to have an evening with Ben Fong Torres. So all these things are happening there, plus our regular events. Radio Day by the Bay is coming up in July 27th. It's going to be a big deal this time, so you need to come on by. The other exciting thing that's happening is after many years of planning, we are starting probably within a couple of weeks to do the restoration on the front of our building, removing the false 1950s facade and going back to the 1900 Mission Revival style. And the city of Alameda is so happy with what we're doing. Yesterday we received two $15,000 grants from the city towards our facade project. So they're very pleased with what we're doing. Lots of, who pulled that off? Our new executive director, Rachel Lee, put in for the grants and got them for us. And the grants were suggested by our building inspector, Murray, who's a great guy. All right, I won't keep you. Come see us any Wednesday or Sunday, Wednesday or Saturday, and go to our website and sign up for Listening In, which is the newsletter that we send out every Thursday night, and it tells you all about what's going on with CHRS. Have a good lunch, everyone.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks, Steve. March is Women's History Month, and today's program will be a recognition of the successes of 10 legendary Bay Area TV and radio broadcasters. Before we turn things over to our MCs, Rosie Allen and Lisa Chrysler, it's my honor to present our new program chairman for the Broadcast Legends, John Evans. John is a 45-year veteran of San Francisco market. He retired a year and a half ago from full-time work at KCBS, and now he's a staff announcer at KQED on the weekends, or weekdays, I believe. So he was inducted into the Bay Area Radio Hall of Fame in 2019, and he is a three-time winner of the Don Sherwood Award as the most popular broadcaster in the Bay Area by a vote of the public. So now let's have John come up here and start our program.
Good afternoon, everybody. How y'all doing? Let me see if I can, usually you have an engineer to do this for you. I don't know what I'm doing. It's really great to see all of you. I'm really glad that you all came today. I heard that there was a horrible something going on the Bay Bridge, so you all made it in time. Our entire panel is here and ready to go. I would just want to remind you, if you haven't heard already, you need to put your meal ticket on the table because the waiters are going to be collecting those and try to get the food out here on the table relatively quickly. Before we start the program, which will be about 1 o'clock, 1:10, somewhere in there, depending on how quickly we can get the food out, I did want to remind our audience about some of our members who have passed on in recent weeks. This is a regular feature of our programs where we call it the silent mic. Alan Bowker started in radio while still in junior high school. He was so young that his mom had to drive him to his job. He used the name back then of Don Sherwood for his morning gig at KATI in Casper, Wyoming. Alan came to California in 1972 and worked as a production engineer at KCBS FM. And I believe he worked with you, Sam, didn't he, in those days? Yeah. Everybody worked with him, yep. He attended San Francisco State and he earned his master's in 1975. He worked for Fantasy Records in Berkeley, North Star Labs, and he became an IT manager at KGO-TV. We lost Alan just a couple of weeks ago at the age of 75. Diane Smitham, this is a name that may not be familiar to a lot of you, but it should be because she was the first woman engineer at KQED and at KNBR. She became the first woman announcer when KFOG was playing beautiful music. She also worked at classical KKHI. She worked at KGO Radio and TV. Diane was an active broadcast legend. She sang with the USS Hornet Band. She did radio dramas and voice work for the film industry. She died in early December. We just recently found out about that. We lost a couple of key members of the KSAN family in recent months. Norman Davis tried all sorts of formats, from Top 40 on KYA and Big Band on the original KMPX. He also worked at KSJO, KTIM, and the City, but of course he's best known for getting into our ears and our heads from working the all-night shift at KSAN, the Jive 95. Norman worked all the way to the end. He did his final show on Radio Boise the day before he died at the age of 88. And then the other KSAN alum that we lost is Dusty Street. Now, you may have also heard about that. That was back in December, but I really wanted to include that in the program today because her ex-partner also passed away, and I'll get to that in a moment. KSAN, she wound up at KSAN during the strike at KMPX. She worked here for many years. She worked at KTIM in Marin County. She also went down to LA and did K-Rock and K-West and KLOS. She moved on to Cleveland and worked for the Radio Hall of Fame down there and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And she also did Deep Tracks, a show for Sirius XM. Dusty died at the age of 77. And her former partner and her friend, Gino Michelini, passed away just a couple of weeks ago. This was a real gut punch to me. Gino and I were friends. We worked together at the Camel. He is best known for his time at KOME and the Camel, and then he spent many years down in LA at KLOS. He had a special relationship with his listeners and all of the rock stars, especially the Bay Area rock stars. They loved this guy so much they would just show up at the radio station and sit in on his show. And people like Eddie Money and Carlos Santana and Bob Weir and Jerry Garcia, and it was wild. It was really wild, let me tell you. So Gino died at the age of 77. I'm glad that you all have a creativity there. You can fill in the blanks. Dr. Herbert Zettel, PhD, taught for 40 years at, I'm glad that people remember him, a Broadcast Electronic Communications Department at SF State. He authored Sight, Sound, Motion, Applied Media Aesthetics, Television Production Handbook. He did a DVD. All of his books have been translated into several languages. He was inducted into the Silver and Gold Circles of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. And Dr. Zettel died last fall at the age of 94. Two more. Who remembers Wing Flap on KYA?
Yes. It was his engineer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, James Lee Jr. was best known as Wing Flap. He would call into his favorite show, Russ the Moose Syracuse, who did the all-night shift at KYA. I got to work with Russ at KYA after he had done mornings for a while. James had a savant-like knowledge of music and recording artists, and the banter endeared so many listeners that he wound up becoming a co-pilot of Russ's on his show. He worked at the Shattuck Theater in Berkeley and as a courtesy clerk at a drugstore and a supermarket in Oakland. He died recently at the age of 81. And we'll wrap it up with a man that many of us loved and watched on TV for many years, Jack Hansen. Jack was a fixture on Bay Area TV for 50 years. He worked at Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 5, and best known for his time at Channel 7. He was a broadcast legend. He was a broadcast legend and also a Silver and Gold Circle member of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. He was 91. So we want to pay tribute again to Alan Bowker, Diane Smitham, Norman Davis, whose memorial will be, tell me again.
April 7th at Radio Central.
In Alameda. Special party for Norman Davis. Dusty Street, Gino Michelini, Dr. Herbert Zettel, Wing Flap, and Jack Hansen. So thank you for indulging me for a moment for the silent mic for our program. Hi, Liz. Nice to see you. All right, we're going to get started here in the program about 1 o'clock, 1:15, depending on service. So enjoy your meal, and we'll get back to our panel. Our panel discussion will start at around 1:15. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Evans, and I'm really happy you're all here today. Thank you so much. I understand we're getting started sort of mid-lunch, and I apologize for that, but we wanted to get this program started because some of these people have to go back to work. So this is a working group. Okay. So welcome to our first annual Women's History Month discussion. This year's theme, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I say first annual because we would like to do this every March from here on out. And we're already planning thank you. And we're already planning an event for next year, and we have some really great ideas. And so we will be in touch about that. As the new program chair, I'm going to be producing, along with a team of really great volunteers, 2 Broadcast Legends events, this one and the one in December, which is our holiday party. And then I'll also be producing the California Historical Radio Society events in June and October. That is when we award the legendary station of the year. This year it's my old radio station, Classical KDFC, and I'm really happy about that. Yeah. I spent 8 wonderful years at that radio station, and one of our key people, Hoyt Smith, is here today. Yeah! Take a bow, Hoyt. And then we will do our Bay Area Radio Hall of Fame, our Barhoff induction coming up in October. And we're going to start voting on the nominees here pretty soon, so keep an eye out on your email. We'll be sending information to you. Rosie Allen is the brainchild of this program. We started talking about only 8 weeks ago, right, Rosie? And we said we have a program to do in March. What are we going to do? And said Rosie said I have an idea, and so that's why we're all here today. So thank you, Rosie. I couldn't ask for a better partner. Rosie and I talk several times a week, 5 minutes of business, and then about 55 minutes of gossip and. And stories, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So today, about Rosie, by the way, Rosie came here to the Bay Area in 1969, and she went on the air for the first time in 1970. One of her old bosses is here, Ron Fell. Hey, Ron. She worked at both KNBR and KSFX, and then went on to do the afternoon news at KGO for 25 years. She had to work with Ed Baxter. I tried to get her to work with me, but she had to work with Ted Baxter and then later Greg Jarrett.
No, you mean Ed Baxter, right?
I'm sorry,
But they
Ed
used
Baxter.
to call
Yeah.
him Ted.
Yeah, some Baxter guy.
That was a character on a television show. Yeah.
He was so forgettable that's why I wanted to work with you. No, I'm just kidding. Ed's a good guy. No. So Rosie will be our co-MC today.
Yes.
And our other MC is Lisa Chrysler. She did morning radio in the Bay Area for 40 years. And she and Rosie both have been inducted into the Bay Area Radio Hall of Fame. So give it up to both women. We have some legendary broadcasters in the building today, and I want to turn the rest of the program over to Lisa Chrysler, and I'm going to watch the program. So have fun.
I know, I don't think you can see me behind this podium, so I may have to move over here next to Jessica, which I've wanted to do all my life, so I don't know. So, I just want to know who's minding the store if we've got you all here. I don't know who's back at the radios and TV stations. This is fabulous. I mean, would you look in this room and just look at this front table? I mean, this is one of those moments that you go, this is an Oprah awe moment. It really is. So I am so happy to be here today, and I was so honored to be asked to do anything with you guys. So thank you so much. I mean, these have been my mentors, my heroes, I mean, my everything. So I'm looking at them, and nobody has changed since I last saw them on TV or radio. But I want to introduce each one. Now, their full story is in the program, so take it home. And, before you go to bed tonight, read about every single one of these wonderful ladies, because I'm just going to tell you, like, a brief second about them. Oh, and I also want to tell you, Rebecca Corral was supposed to be here today. She was going to be on this panel. She cannot be with us. But look who we got instead, Sue Hall. Okay, we're going to start with Carolyn Tyler. These aren't in the right order, but that's okay. 32 years. At KGO TV ABC 7. She is the recipient of so many impressive accolades, including the Broadcast Career Achievement Award. And then we got Claudine Wong, who I will say is going to sneak out at 2:15 because they are demanding she be back on the air in time for, I don't know, dinner time or something.
I'm sorry,
I think it's
Lisa.
like 4 o'clock or something.
Lisa, I'm sorry. Isn't her name Claudia? That was just a bad joke today.
Ted Baxter and Claudia Wong.
Exactly.
I love it. So she's been with KTVU for Fox 2 for over 2 decades, and she's got a bunch of awards. She's co-founder of the station's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion News Council. Woo-hoo. How appropriate is that? Then we got the beautiful Dana King, 25 years in broadcast journalism, working in New York, LA, and then at KPIX 5 TV in San Francisco. She's got so many awards, and now she's an award-winning sculptor. She does not stop. Oh, my goodness. We may not let you go back, but okay. We got Fresca Guararti. Where is Fresca down there? She spells it different than the can that you drink from, but she started her radio career in San Francisco in 1993. 31 years later, there she is, right there. And she's been at KBLX and Coit, and she's a cancer survivor, and she is a black belt in Taekwondo, so we're not messing with her today. We got Holly Kwan. Everybody knows Holly. Been at KCBS Radio since 1997. Is now the midday anchor, and she actually got started in radio when she was 16. And that was back in 2021, she was inducted into one of us, our Bay Area Radio Hall of Fame. How about that? And then this gorgeous lady down here, Jessica Aguirre, an award-winning TV journalist. She started at Univision in Miami, went to LA, and then we all got to know her here at ABC 7, and now she's doing the nightly news on NBC Bay Area. We got Joanne Green way down there. You heard her at KFRC, KSAN, KRE, as well as Evening Magazine on KPIX TV. And she does podcasts, and I don't know, one of them's called All the F Words. Don't ask. Miranda Wilson. Where's beautiful Miranda? I got to meet for the first time right there. 18 years long as midday host on Smooth Jazz 103.7 KKSF. And she's been with KBLX, and now through the magic of radio, you can hear her in Atlanta and Florida. So how about that? How about that? Roberta Gonzalez, who I thought was like a movie star walking in today. AP's best weathercaster 18 times over. Decades she was on KPIX 5 and KCBS Radio. Found her home now as meteorologist at KTVU Fox 2. 35 plus years in TV and radio, that lady down there. And the lovely Sue Hall. So this 2019 Bay Area Hall of Famer has or still is working at all the biggies. So let's see. We got 610 KFRC. We got KMEL. We got K101. We got Coit. We got KZST. And this little station called ABC 7 TV, she's on there too. She knows traffic as well as she knows music. There she is. And then Rosie, I know we've already said how wonderful you are, but I wrote it. I'm saying it. Okay. So our wonderful host today started her award-winning Bay Area radio career back in 1969, 25 years, co-anchoring the afternoon with Ed Baxter on KGO Radio. And she's been in the Bay Area Hall of Fame since 2008. So, again, we know, thank you, Rosie, we know that Claudine will be leaving. I want you ladies to know I'm the only one who's going to touch the mic, so you will not be sharing germs. I'll share germs with myself. So we're all good. So I think you're ready to go, Miss Rosie.
Yeah, you know, we have a challenge today. And that challenge is time. Because these ladies are very well-spoken, and they can talk, as we all can. And so the challenge is to give each of the panelists an opportunity to be heard. You're very well seen because you're all beautiful, but you're going to be heard today. So here are the guidelines. Each panelist will have a total of 2 minutes and 30 seconds to respond to each question. I know that's not a lot of time because these questions are big, but do your best. There will be a soft chime at the end of 2 minutes. Beautiful Bob. That's 2 minutes. And then 30 seconds later, this is what you'll hear. And then after that, the guy with the hook comes out. Anyway, with that in mind, I want to start with a rather serious question. As we all know, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's kind of a hot button issue. A lot of people are talking about it. What your opinions are, fine, you know, you can decide for yourself what you think. But the question for each of you is today is looking back on the beginning of your career, how much, if any, did the current concept of DEI impact your career in broadcasting? Did gender hurt or help? And what do you think was most difficult, being a woman or being a member of an ethnic group? Now, because Claudine is leaving earlier, we'll begin at your end of the table. Claudine, help us out.
No pressure.
No pressure,
No,
I know.
I'm scared to touch this mic.
But it matches so well.
I know. I color coordinated with the microphone today. I got to start a timer because you're going to cut me off because I can talk. All right. I think diversity, equity, inclusion, in the beginning of my career, they didn't have a word for it. They didn't have a name for it. But I think when you talk about DEI, it used to be a box check. And so I can't separate being a woman and being a woman of color. It just doesn't happen. So my stories kind of, they'll meld a little bit. When my first job, I was told I had to keep my hair long because that was part of the reason that they hired me, right? Because I was a woman with long hair. I was called Connie Chung for like the first 10 years of my career. Told I had to cut my hair similar to her because that was a box check, right? Her career was going well. They wanted someone who matched that. I was accused of being a liberal, independent woman when I asked tough questions. I was told by the head of sales at my first job that I shouldn't have kids with my then boyfriend, now husband, because he was white, I would taint his blood with mine, and our children would always feel dirty. I was asked to speak at a diversity, equity, inclusion, it wasn't called that, it was called Diversity Month, at a local college, and the head of production said, well, Claudine, what are you gonna do? Talk about how the white man put you down? And then said, as I was walking out, you people have gotten more opportunity in this country than you would have gotten anywhere else. I was told I should get into sports because women had an easy path into sports because that was a thing. I'm pretty sure no female broadcaster would tell you that she had an easy path or that they continue to have an easy path. I was told when I got my second job by a coworker that I only got that job because there was a reporter of Vietnamese descent at the other station and I need to counter that. I was told I would get an easy path because I was a woman and a woman of color, but I was also told not to apply to other places because they didn't need women and women of color, or they already had one. I was asked after I had my first child, they're like, "Oh, are you a mother?" when I interviewed for a job in a major market. I am told even now, smile more. You should smile more. I fight to read sports stories to prove that the woman who apparently should have been a sportscaster way back when can actually read sports, and I understand sports, and I have something to add. I get more criticism from viewers about what I wear and what my hair looks like. We are told we get too old faster than our male counterparts. We are paid less, according to statistics, than our male counterparts. Now I hope we don't box check. Now I hope we value the fact that when we come to the table, we bring more than just a box. We bring our diversity, we bring our experience, and I hope that women are learning to lift each other up.
Well done. Well done. Well said. Well said. Joanne, do you need the question again, or are you good?
So, when I first took a radio production class in college, I was the only female. And the teacher wasn't that much older than me, and he would make jokes for the guys in the classroom. And I went up to him at the end of the class and I said, "Not okay. Just not okay." I started my career in San Francisco radio, actually Berkeley, in 1975. And yeah, it was definitely an issue that I was female, although I am very proud to say I worked for a female general manager who's honored on the plaque at the table over there, Alice Potter. So she definitely forged the way for many of us. I remember applying for a job at one point at a large radio station in San Francisco that shall not be named. They had openings for an anchor and a reporter, and I was a news anchor. And when I went for the interview, the program director, who was younger than me at the time, and I was pretty young still, said, "No, the job for the anchor is for a man, and the job for the reporter is for a woman." And I said, "Well, why is that?" And he said, "Because we want a male voice of authority." And I said, "Well, who was the voice of authority in your home?" Because in mine, he then wanted to talk about me being a possible reporter. And I said, I all things being equal, and I can't work for someone who says that the voice of authority is a male voice. I think that we should just stop right here and agree to disagree, and walked out with my dignity. And just very grateful for the opportunities that have grown. But as Claudine said, we have a long way to go, and we have a long way to go in many regards. Certainly, I think even more on television than on radio. But throughout life generally, we're in a process here, and we can't become complacent because no one's going to do this for us. Thank you.
Do you need the question, Carolyn, or are you good?
I'm good. I don't know if I'm going to answer everything, but I wanted to start with just a little bit of perspective. The way most black reporters got into this business was after President Lyndon Johnson commissioned the Kerner Commission to look into the cause of civil unrest in the 1960s. There were more than 150 so-called race riots, and he was trying to find the reasons. And the commission looked into everything from disparities in health care, education, housing, and also the media. And they laid blame on basically on white racism for reasons that there was so much unrest. And in terms of the media, they said that the images that were perpetrated of black people was primarily based on crime, and that we were never seen as ordinary human beings just living our lives like everybody else, and that was because of a dearth in blacks in front of the camera, behind the camera, and in all facets of the media. So that quickly changed things, and you had folks like Max Robinson and Carol Simpson, Bernard Shaw, Renee Poussaint, and here in the Bay Area, Belva Davis, upon whose shoulders, yes, that I feel like I stand. So when you talk about one person, when I came into KGO TV, they were looking for a black woman to replace a black woman. The black woman that they had lost was Beverly Johnson, the weathercaster who died in a tragic accident on Doyle Drive. And so at that point, they had already had newscasters like Valerie Coleman and Dorothy Reed, but there was nobody to fill that void. So I stepped into that. So I think, yes, definitely being black and a woman has played a role in my career. And I would also say, I would add to that something that isn't discussed that much, but which is colorism. Because as a woman of a darker hue or a brown hue, that has played a role when they want to showcase lighter black women because they're supposedly more palatable to a white audience. So that's been another barrier that I've had to cross over. But I appreciate being here and 32 years at KGO TV.
Well said. Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I touched it. Before I start, I do want to say thank you to Val Mackey. She's our female market manager at Bonneville. She's here today. Thank you so much. And then also Ellen Perez. She's the only woman on Big Bay Mornings at 99.7 on our sister station. We have a female program director here at the Bone. Chasta's here today. And I love that I have Gianna Franco here, a very strong woman in sports. So thank you so much for all of you being here and everyone here today. But the interesting thing is, I guess I always loved a challenge, I guess. I get my sister's here. She could vouch for this, that our father was always very much the person to tell us, I guess maybe even on purpose, that you can't do that. And we'd be like, well, watch me, kind of thing. And I started radio actually as a DJ. And so I would be a part of a mobile DJ, and we'd do parties and things like that. And, I had to hook up my own gear. And the funny thing was when I'd be in certain places, I'd hear guys, they would just kind of dismiss me. I wouldn't know anything about equipment or whatever. And they would say stuff, and I'm like, gosh, I have to insert myself because, no, you have to do this. If you're getting interference, it's because you didn't ground it well, and you got to do this. I can hook it up for you if you want. And guys would be like, or you can just continue that way if you want. That's fine too. And I started to kind of gain a little bit more trust with the guys in the, touching it again, in the industry. So, but the interesting thing is I have felt a lot of the most of the discrimination. And I was just, telling her about this, Claudine, about this, that it came from my own, from Filipinos. And I did a little bit of TV as well. And they said, I hosted a program, and they said, you know what? You should probably change your host because she's too dark. And I was like, what? I just could not believe it. And so I told my makeup artist, I said, can you make me darker? Because I love being brown, first of all. And there's so many shades of, color and all this. And they were kind of upset that I found out about it. But, I use it to my advantage, where it's just like, hey, you know what? We are who we are. And I'm very proud of being a woman in this industry. And I do feel that it is a little bit tougher because they say, hey, you got to look presentable. Where it's like, what, I got to dye my hair every 3 weeks, which I do, which gets very expensive. But sometimes those are some of the things that women do have to deal with because it's the aging process and all this stuff. And, it's like, well, you know what? I'm here. My women counterparts are here, and we're here to stay and grow stronger and support each other as we should. So thank you.
First of all, thank you all for attending today. I know everybody has an agenda, everybody is busy, and it's a privilege being here with each and every one of you today. Thank you for making time for all of us. And also, it is just such a privilege sitting at the big table. And I don't want to say I'm nervous, but I get very excited. I think you've seen that on TV before. I get adrenaline rushes. Feel my hands right now, just how cold they are, because I'm just so excited being here with all of you wonderful women that I have just adored and just cherished for many decades now. I began my career when I was 17 years old. When I was 11, my mom and dad were able to get me a tape recorder for my birthday, and we came from limited means, so they got that tape recorder through blue chip stamps. And when I try to tell people that story, they usually don't know what a blue chip stamp is, so thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. It took 40 books for that tape recorder. And I still have it. I have it in my office in Pleasanton, but I went around interviewing everybody all the time. And I decided I was going to be a journalist at the age of 11 and bring the news to the people. So I worked my way up, and of course I had to apply for scholarships in order to go to college, and I was accepted through the Equal Opportunity Program to go to San Diego State. And my first job in television Go Aztecs! My first job at 17, I went to a Mexican independent TV station in San Diego, XETV, and I kept knocking down their door. And they finally looked at me and they said, well, she's Mexican, she can garden. And so I and I became the gardener. And I was the gardener at the TV station. But my mom told me, whatever job you ever do, you do it to the best of your ability. And so I was promoted to messenger, where my job every day was to take the film rolls, because our TV station being independent, we had Dick Van Dyke, I Love Lucy, The Jetsons, Big Valley Days, Perry Mason. And so I used to take those films across the border to Tijuana every day as the messenger and an Etzel. I'm serious. I wasn't born in the 50s, but I had an Etzel. Okay, really, really fast. So then I became a film editor. From film editor, I got a job at KGTV in San Diego. McGraw-Hill hired me as a minority reporter trainee, which meant for 1 year I could be a reporter. So I was in the newsroom one day when the weathercaster had a massive heart attack. We filmed it as a story, then called 911, and then they took him away, and he was in the hospital, and nobody could do the weather. The news director turned around and said, who's going to do my weather? Well, it's ad lib, what I do right now. And so I said, I'll do it. And so I went on the air at that point. The general manager called me afterwards. She said, you may have a career if you lose your last name because it's Hispanic, you lose the mole on your face because it makes you look too ethnic, and thirdly, you got to wear tight sweaters. This is the 80s. This was like 1981, so I have never changed my name, obviously. I never lost the mole, and I have never to this day worn a tight sweater on TV.
Yeah. It's them short skirts. Woo! Well, it comes to me. There's a lot of stories here, and it was really hard trying to choose one of them. But the one I guess I can remember the most, because I'm looking at Hoyt, is how when I first came to KKSF. And I did promotions and marketing and public affairs at the old KSOL, or actually KDIA, and I did, the old KDIA, which, that's right, and then KSOL I worked at first in promotions. And I would always notice how in promotions, the jocks, they'd send a jock out to do a remote, and promotions person had to hang the signs, carry all the bumper stickers, the prizes, set up the microphone, do everything, put the banners up, and then the jock would saunter in and you hand them the microphone and they would just do their thing. And I remember once I was out at Hilltop Mall and had to bring a television. We were giving away a television out at the mall. So of course in my little Camaro, I had to pack the television, pull up my skirt and show my knees a little bit so the security guy could help me carry it into the building because the jock wasn't going to help me. And so, to make a terribly long story short, the winner of the TV did not show up, so I took the television home. I learned a lot in my first year about all the little prizes. You weren't making any money, but I had good TV and a good stereo. So I also remembered, though, I would never, if I ever became a jock, I would never treat anyone in promotions or any other department that way ever again. I was learning a lot. But being on-air talent is part of being a team, which brings me to when I finally got to KKSF, I felt very much like I was a part of a team. Now, Hoyt Smith was our afternoon drive guy. It's a good story, Hoyt, not one of the bad ones. And I was new because we had to do our own production, and it wasn't a union station, which is good. It gave me a chance to use grease pencil. And every third word I had a grease pencil on. We had to do, especially if we had to do music bids. And so I dubbed a couple spots. Thank you. And Hoyt said, Miranda, he was on the air, and he said, come and listen to this spot. I said, yeah. Stand right here in between both speakers. Now, can you hear? It's out of phase. And I was like, out of phase? I remember that from San Francisco State. But it kind of sounds distorted. He said, absolutely. Now, this is how you fix it. And he showed me how to get the spot, the dub, make it in phase so it would sound properly on the air. That was teamwork. That was partnership. And that's what I learned the most at that station. I was a part of a team no matter what color I was, what gender I was. And they were telling me that they don't hire black people at KKSF. And I was the first, although I was part-time, to be first African-American woman on that station.
All right. She's a taskmaster, that's right. Speaking of rule breakers, that is a perfect segue because that was me. I grew up in the 60s and 70s in hippie town, which was Mill Valley. It was not the Mill Valley today, folks. This was like Haight-Ashbury North. And when I was in the 7th grade, we were not allowed to wear, girls were not allowed to wear pants to school. That was my first rebellion. I showed up wearing pants and I got sent home. My next rebellion was learning to golf with my grandfather, who was a member of a pretty prestigious club back east, and women were not allowed to play golf at this golf course, so he had to sneak me on the back nine. And I never forgot that, and I questioned him about it. And so golf became kind of a big thing for me because later on in my career, I realized that golf was where a lot of these guys were doing business. And I'm like, excuse me, I want to golf. And they're like, no. So I ended up somehow getting my way on the golf course, and I found out one big rule is that these guys, I was no worse or better than any of them. So equality in anything, exactly. Thank you, Dana. So that was the era of the 70s, basically, that I grew up in. When I got into radio, I was not a trailblazer. There were other women on the air, but not many. Not many. My first job was in 1978, and it was a very small market, and there were no women at that station. When I got to KFRC in 1980, there were several women ahead of me, Shauna and a couple of other ladies, but Dusty Street, who we saw up here, she was one of my idols. Liz St. John and I went to high school together. So Liz is another one that we grew up in the same exact, we went to high school, same exact thing, ended up on the radio. Another one of our colleagues, Mary Holloway, who is no longer with us, Mary ended up at Camel. And, oh my gosh, that's fast. Anyway, so I had women to look up to, but I was a fighter, I was a rule breaker, and I think the biggest thing, there was no diversion, equity, inclusion. It was a quota. It was a quota, and whether you were a woman or other minority, it was at that time a quota to fill. Thank God that has changed, but we still have a long way to go. So thank you all for being here and including me. I was supposed to be the MC, but Rebecca got sick, so I'm so sorry because I love Rebecca, and I love all of you women. You're just
And I'm
amazing.
happy. So thank you for
And
being on the
I'm
panel.
happy too.
I got your job. Yeah. Don't touch. We discussed this. Okay, Dana.
I'm
Okay.
not touching it. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to tell you two stories that will hopefully answer this question. I didn't start in this business to be on the air. I have a business degree, and I wanted to run a TV station, so I started in sales. And I started in Los Angeles, and one day my boss, and I love my job. I love my job. And he called me into his office. I thought I was in trouble. He had just fired the only black on-air reporter, an incredible woman, smart, strong, beautiful, Angela Black, and he fired her. And he freaked out. He thought, that the entire black community was going to come after the station. And I'm sorry. I had to move it up. I'm sorry. There. And he said, I want you to be a reporter. And I said, where? And now he's second guessing himself. And he said, here. And I said, on TV? And he said, yeah. I said, no. He said, I want you to be a reporter. And it clicked. Oh, yeah, you're my boss. Okay. So I thought, all right, how hard could it be? Hardest thing ever. And I made him promise that I get my job back if he didn't like me in the job and if I didn't like it. And I was terrible. Couldn't remember my name. I'm in front of this fire. Back to you in the studio. Couldn't remember the anchors' names. No, I was terrible. So, and nobody liked me. Everyone hated me. They assumed I was sleeping with a boss. And I worked really hard to not embarrass my coworkers who worked their entire careers to get to that station, the number one station in the number two market. And I would fall asleep at the dinner table. I mean, they worked me hard, and that's how I learned this job. And my second story is, and so it wasn't about racism. It was about learning to be a good reporter. But my second story is about gender and about age. This hair? I got fired because of this hair. You all didn't know that. When I left K-Pix, it was because I refused to dye my hair. And yes, I wanted to go, but not like that. But so gender is a huge issue for us as women, no matter what color we are. And so, okay, I'm not gonna touch it. But anyway, that's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to be brief because I lost my voice last week and I just got it back, and that's not great for radio people. But I was really lucky because I was born and raised in Oakland, and there was an organization called Youth News. Thank you to Joanne Green because it produced a 15-minute public affairs show that was on KFRC. And they were looking for teenagers, and they wanted to teach them radio. And it wasn't to teach them how to be a DJ or something like that. It was really to teach them how to write and how to report. And so I learned how to, I wanted to just write. I didn't want to be on the air. But they taught you how to, use a grease pencil and how to use razor blades and how to cut tape and how to do all that stuff. And I was surrounded by African-American kids and Latino kids and white kids and Asian kids. And so it was normal to me to be surrounded by this. And it wasn't until I went into the professional field that I saw that it wasn't all like that. And what happened to all the kids that I came up with? Where did they all go? I don't know. I was lucky, though, because my first job after getting out of San Francisco State was at KQED, which was already a public radio station, already very liberal and progressive. And I worked for a female news director. And she, took me under her wing, and she taught me how to, write stories. And I never felt like I was told no when I wanted to do a story on the first Asian domestic women's shelter in San Francisco, not realizing how unique of a story that was, but thinking that it was an interesting story. And I was never told no. So, I had this great upbringing where I was brought up under this woman's wing. The one thing that I did notice was that, when you deal with KQED, you get a lot of really smart people. And I think we were doing a Commonwealth Club or some lecture, and there was a pedantic, academic, Asian expert professor who came up to me and said, "Holly, that's a really interesting name. What two characters are those?" I mean, what? Because he thought it was like Holly, like Holly. Yeah, like what two characters are those? And I'm like Christmas. And he totally didn't get it. I had to explain to him. So I came away with that feeling like I wasn't Asian enough for that particular role, and that he saw me as a certain way, and he didn't get the fact that, like, you know, it's a normal name, you know.
Thank you. I won't touch. So, first of all, I just want to say what an honor it is to be here and with these women. You know, Carolyn Tyler and I are good friends. We worked at KGO together. Roberta and I live in the same city. And Dana King, I have to say, when I first moved to the Bay Area to go anchor at KGO, I was so intimidated that I was going to be anchoring across the street from you, because you were such a hero to me, and to be able to sit here on this panel, I'm just really, really honored. Because you are such a strong, amazing woman, and I thought I could never really, live up to the level of anchoring that you did. So I'm really happy to be here with you. Anyway, I have to say I have a very different story, because I started my career in Miami, and it wasn't an altruistic thing at all, but Cubans made up the majority of were starting to be the majority in the 80s of the population, and I think TV stations realized they needed some Hispanics on TV to represent them, so they were actively looking for that. I had been working for Univision since I was an intern there. I was a producer. I'd done different things, and now I was on the air on Univision. I was still young. I was like 25 years old. And I went to an NAJHJ conference, and this really tall, skinny man was stalking me the entire time. Turns out it was Kenny Lindner, the agent. And but I didn't know who he was, and he kept stalking me and asking me to dinner until finally somebody said, "Oh, you should go to dinner with him. He's a big agent." And I remember it was the days when we had answering machines. So I left a message on my answering machine that said, I'm going out to this man who says he's an agent. His name is Kenny Lindner. If I disappear and die, he killed me." No, it's the truth, right? Because he was freaky looking. But I went to dinner with him, and he asked me, "Do you want to do English language TV?" And I said, "Well, yeah, of course." And I remember it wasn't like he was saying it to be rude. We're talking the late 80s. He said to me, "Well, I can get you a job on English TV because you are light-skinned Hispanic, and you will be passable to white people on TV." And when you're that age, and it was before this age of enlightenment, this is me. Yeah. I'm super light-skinned, right? You want to get the job. So I started working at CBS station in Miami, WCIX, and I remember getting the job was the easy part. Proving to people that I was worth the job was different. The first day I got there, they said to me, "Do you speak English?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think we're speaking English." And after that, I think the journey became more for me about authority, and along the way constantly being told, well, we weren't cheerleaders, or my appearance became an issue for my career the whole way, very much like what Dana's talking about. And I think that was a tone that has continued before now, because I'm not a passive person. I'm not agreeable. And it's always been kind of an issue of you're too hard, you're a ball buster, you're constantly asking questions that don't need to be asked. And I thought, isn't my job to ask questions? And I don't think one of the requirements is agreeable. I think it should be a different way, right? So that's the thing that's really plagued me through my career. Anyway.
Well done. Oh, well, okay. Well done, ladies. The next portion of the program is going to be kind of like a free-for-all. There are a lot of questions. If you want to respond, just give me a little nod. I won't necessarily call on each of you, because we want to give everyone a chance to just, be heard. So, second question, and it's kind of serious. The question of age is being talked about a lot these days, as you well know. So, how old is too old for certain occupations, and have you been faced with an ageism question or issue in your work? Dana, you already spoke to that. I didn't know that you got fired like a lot of people because of your hair. That was crazy. Yeah. Yes, Jessica.
I think ageism is a huge issue for women in our business. And I think it's interesting for me to having been the young woman who was anchoring with an older man. When I anchored with Pete Wilson, there was a big age difference between us. And so I was always told to be more deferential to Pete at that point. And because I was younger, I wasn't taken as serious. But now as the tide continues, now I am the serious one, right? Because of my age. And when they pair me with younger women, I'm the first person to joke about it. I'll always be like, oh, it's mommy and me day, Sure, let's do this. And for the most part, I don't think I get a lot of it, but it's interesting when we post things on social media with one of the younger anchors, a lot of times people will be like, well, when is Jessica going to retire? It's time for her to go. And I think it's such it's so ridiculous because I feel that now at 60, I am the smartest, the most prepared, and I'm so on my game than I ever have been. And I am lucky that at my station, I have a female general manager and I have a female news director. And literally what we talk about all the time is at this moment that my kids are gone and it's just me, I am so news centric that this is the best work I've ever done at this moment, whether it's in Race in America or it's the investigative unit. I'm the most valuable right now than I've ever been. I don't have the distractions. So if my face is a distraction to the viewers, that's their problem, I feel, because my work is the best it's ever been. And I think I'm very lucky to be at a station where they do appreciate that. And they don't really look at that number. They look at the number that I'm giving them in terms of the work that I'm doing, I think, better, right?
I want to put a pin in the age question for just a minute because I had a conversation with Claudine earlier. And this is one of the questions or the conversations that we had. $1 billion baby film is Barbie. We know that. So, Claudine, my question is, tell me if you saw the film, first of all. What was your takeaway? And did it speak to where you are or your children are at this moment?
I did see the movie. I understand why people liked the movie. I understand why some people were emotionally attached to the movie. I was not emotionally attached to the movie because no Barbie I ever played with looked like me. Despite what the movie showed, I didn't have that emotional attachment. Barbie was never about me. Barbie was about what was available on the shelf. Barbie was, for me, the Barbie who blinked with her blue eyeshadow, which I tried. It didn't look very good on me. So Barbie for me, and the conversation we had, is that it is important in these spaces to recognize that there are good messages, but we need to see them in all their layers. Hamilton was not black. There's a message there that they're trying to get us to reset and relook at all of these things. And for me, Barbie was to say, okay, we can see that, but let's not all go out and buy progressive Barbie, because Barbie, that was not whatever Barbie was. The reason this movie exists is because that's not what Barbie was. And so we do celebrate. I also have a female news director and a female general manager, and we also fight all of these things, and we celebrate the victories, and we celebrate the fact that this movie can be made, and we celebrate that people are celebrating the movie. But we should also see all the sides of it for me, right? Like, I was not crying in the movie theater. I was like, whoa, this is a change of story. I'm like, this is different. And it still didn't represent my story. There's a lot of stories I can recognize that are important stories to be told. I also recognize as I sit in that theater that was not my story they were telling. And I just think that when we talk about these things and we talk about, and I think what Jessica was saying is so important too, like, it is about what we put out in the world. It's also how it's received. It's also how we decide how we're going to let people receive it, right? Like, is it the viewers who are insisting that all women be, only a certain age and younger? Or do we insist that they eat their vegetables too and they recognize the power that we bring at all ages? Do we sit in a Barbie movie and say, this is an important message, but do we recognize there's another message that we cannot miss if we're really going to take away from that movie?
Okay, anybody else want to tackle Barbie while we're on that page?
Anybody?
All right, I do have a question for Miranda, and I didn't forget you, Miranda. We were talking about age earlier. Now, there's also another issue that you and I've discussed is, was there a time when you had to make a choice about how you wanted to present yourself in this business? Were you going to be one of the guys, or you're going to be fully the woman that you are? And
Absolutely.
that's something I think we've all had to deal with.
Yeah, I think I noticed that in my first internship at KMEL when it was Camel. And when you're an intern, you get to observe a whole lot. You get to see what the salespeople do, and you get to see who the PD is and who's going to get fired. And the talk, you get to keep your ear to the ground, which is very, very important. And you knew who was the radio jump off, I'm just going to put it that way, the woman who wants to sleep her way up, or were you going to be one of the boys? And that came in handy, knowing that at the beginning of radio. Now, I got started, though, in the 80s. Things were a little bit different in the 80s. But I was older in radio. I didn't get into it in my late 20s, and when I got my first on-air gig, I think I was 30. And so I pretty much knew how to carry myself. But when I worked at K-Soul, it's almost like working in the mafia. Because you really did have to know who to talk to, how to carry yourself, or folks would get the wrong idea. And there were women that came in, there were men that came in that would come in and kind of flirt their way through the business. And I didn't want to be that kind of person. I wanted to let my knowledge as well as me as a person move me up. I wanted to be on air is what I wanted, but you had a long way before you get there. So there was always a couple of jocks that liked to flirt. Now, I could either be the tomboy, because like I say, I grew up in Oakland. I have some street smarts about myself. And at the same time, I knew which security guard to wink at and say, can you help me carry this heavy thing here? I knew how far to carry it, but I had to learn how far to carry it. And I had to decide very early, because if you didn't, your career would not last very long. So that was one thing, to carry yourself with respect. And by the time I got to KKSF, I keep using it because it was one of the best experiences in the world. I'm going to say, just make a general statement. We worked back in those days in the best market in the world because it was diverse. Black folks didn't just listen to R&B music back then. White folks just didn't listen to rock music. There were Latino people that just didn't listen to Spanish music, Spanish-speaking music. There was a variety, and I grew up in that kind of market that made me move around a little bit differently. So there was always somebody that had my back, and most of the guys did help me more than anything because I carried myself like one of the guys, but yet feminine enough to be that, hey, I'm a woman, don't go too far, I will knock you out.
Okay, we want to go back. Fresca, do you have something?
Okay, wait. This is a very important job.
And we love you, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
you all
you are
laugh,
doing
but
it
it's
very
important.
well. I don't know exactly how far I want to tell the details of this story, because I want to be. You want me to just go for it? Yeah. With all of the language that was used in this conversation? Okay. So I was the only woman in this morning show in Sacramento at KSFM at the time. And it was very much a boys' club there. And I remember at these jock meetings, my PD would always try to embarrass me in front of the staff, promotions and programming. And I couldn't understand why he was doing that. And so I had to try to fire off and kind of hold my own. And he was like, oh, yeah, you were in Hawaii, right? It's like, yeah, why? He goes, oh, yeah, we were kicking your ass at night. And I was like, when I was there? I go, I didn't even know you were in the market. And I go, well, who was your night guy? Because I was doing nights. He goes, oh, Big Mama was our night guy. And I was like, oh, right, because I was kicking his ass. So that's probably why I didn't even know you were there, right? So we would have these conversations. And he told me one day, you don't give a female perspective enough on the show. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't know how more female you want me to be, but because this is the personality you wanted on the air, I'm giving it to you. And he was like saying, well, you're going to need to find more female things to say. And I'm like, okay. So I was very depressed there because I kind of started questioning, like, well, what does he mean? Like, what am I supposed to do? And so there was another time I eventually left because I was like, I'm going to get fired. But he came up to me one day because one of the guys that I saw, that I was also one of the guys, right, who's also a DJ, and he said, "Hey, why don't we trade every other record on the air when we're mixing on the air for the afternoon show?" I was like, "I'd love to do that, but I don't know. We'll see." And so our PD came in and he said something like, "Hey, something about, God, I don't even know if I want to say this. Should I just say it? If this is going to be on YouTube, you're going to have to, bleep us out." But he said, "Oh, well, something about sucking my whatever." And I said, "Whip it out then, because mine's bigger than yours." And then he goes, "Well, you're not really a woman." And I said, "Well, I bleed every month, and I have to deal with men like you, narrow-minded men like you." And I think I probably quit like a month later because I was like, this is not where I'm going to grow. And I didn't want to work with somebody like that. So, but those are the kinds of things that women sometimes have to go through because either you're not female enough or they think they can get over on you and you have to assert yourself, but then you're the bitch at that point. And it's like, well, that's just how it is sometimes.
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's
So
a tough one.
thank you for allowing me to express myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we move on, does anyone else want to tackle the question of age? Are we good with that? Okay, we'll move on.
Oh, wait.
Roberta?
Okay, Roberta.
I think in reality, Dana King and I could own a particular TV station in town if we really wanted to.
Okay.
We really could. When I first started at KPIX, I was the youngest female in the newsroom, and I was reminded by it at the particular time, and I had to really earn the respect of my colleagues as well as the viewers. And after 21, 22 years there, I became the oldest female in the newsroom, and it became to a point where I was reminded of that all the time by my bosses. And it came to a point where my salary was getting cut. Every time it was time for negotiating a new contract, they didn't want to oust me because I was performing well with the focus groups, but they didn't want to pay me because I was told they could bring in 2 people for the price of 1. I was told that I was aging out, literally told that. I was taken into a conference room and shown a picture of me that was 12 years old, that picture, and told they wanted me to be that person again. And when I left KPIX and when KTVU called me, the first thing I asked the news director, Amber Eichel, she said to me, "We'd like to bring you on staff." And I said, "Well, first off, how do you want me to wear my hair? And what earrings do you want me to wear? And how long should my skirts be?" And she said, "We are hiring you because we want you. We want you to be you." And that was the first time I had heard that in the San Francisco market. And to this day, KTVU is allowing me to do that. And I've never been judged by age by a viewer. In fact, the viewers tell me that they engage with me with my forecasting because I have been in this market since 1996. And before that, I was in Chicago 7 years, but before that, I was at KNTV for 4 years. And when you do get older, you gather more experience. As Jessica was saying, I know the topography, I know the climate, I know weather patterns and conditions. And this is something that should be embraced instead of disqualified as you are getting older.
Well said. Thank you.
I want to talk about money just a little bit. And Carolyn, of course, I want to start with you. We had this whole controversy. Taraji Henson was going after Oprah and Tyler Perry because she said she was not paid well enough as a black woman. And so has that been your experience, or is that something you can speak to?
Absolutely. I mean, I think overall, the media is just like any other industry where men do make more money. I don't know what it is. Women are 76 cents for the dollar that a man earns. I mean, it's no different in the industry. And I do think in terms of the aging, part of it doesn't just have to do it has to do with what you said, that they can hire somebody younger for much less. So that's part of the issue of why they want to get you out. But I mean, they know it's a lawsuit waiting to happen, so they tread very carefully on that. There were several times I felt like I could have sued as well over money, age, gender, race, but you do that and then you get blacklisted in the business, even though they're not supposed to talk about that in terms of your next employment. Word certainly gets out, oh, this is an angry black woman, don't hire her. So that becomes an issue. But yes, definitely there are salary differences. Even if you are the main one that they're watching compared to the male counterpart, I will just say for myself, at one point I had a male anchor who had very limited experience in the business, and I know he was making much more than I was. And what do? I mean, you kind of suck it up and try to do the best that you can, but yeah, I still have bitterness about that.
Joanne, your thoughts on that?
She touched it. I'm sitting on my hands. I'm going to be so
Given
good.
up.
I think that in my experience, bosses want to pay as little as they can, and I've had a range of different experiences. We've worked at union stations, we've worked at non-union stations. I, in fact, filled in as a talk show host on KGO radio, making $200 per shift, and they didn't hire a full-time person because they could just keep having part-time fill-in people come and do those shifts. So I don't know what happened eventually, but I mean, the station isn't, of course, what it was, or at all, right? So I think that it's a money game, and people pay what they have to pay, and not a penny more. And I think it's important for women to get representation, to get agents to do that negotiating on their behalf. The ageism issue is less of an issue in radio, of course, and it's one of the beautiful things about radio, right? No one sees this. But for television, right? But you can't be in this industry, certainly not for those decades, 70s, 80s, 90s, and the last 25 years or so, without having experienced this level of discrimination.
Thank you.
Thank God for the unions.
Oh, yes, for sure. For sure. Okay. Is there life after broadcasting? I have a question about that.
Ooh.
But I would love it if Holly would respond to the question of either age or money.
I think that, well, like Joanne pointed out, for radio it's so much different because you don't. I think that I hope that as you get older and you stay in one place, and because you gain the institutional knowledge of the Bay Area, that hopefully that is valued. You walk into a newsroom full of people who said, "Who's Moscone?" And that actually happened. And you went, "Oh my God." And it's not it's you want to pass on that knowledge. There's so many people, like you said, they can hire two people for what they pay one of us, right? But then those two people that they hire, are what is their experience level? What is their knowledge of the Bay Area? Do they know how to pronounce the names of all the towns? Do they know how to put stories in context because of something that happened in the history of the Bay Area? Do they know that when COVID comes along, it follows sort of this parallel to what happens during the AIDS crisis? Can they make those connections? And I think that in itself, if you can do that by being here and being an older or more experienced person, you can draw those connections and bring a richer and more thorough and thoughtful story
to your audience, because, and hopefully they recognize that, because they've been here for a while too. I think that also has to do with, like, so how transient maybe your audience is, whether you have a lot of tech people and a lot of people that move into the area and they don't recognize that there are people who've been on the air for so long, and those are your trusted voices. And there's a reason why they're there. I would always want to go to the people that I know that I grew up watching, because I saw, I know that they were there. They lived through the earthquake and the fire in the Oakland Hills.
I'm going to just lean over and say something. I think it's interesting, though, like when you've been here this long and then they bring in, we have a very good reporter last night. This happened last night. She's an excellent reporter. She's lovely. But they're doing a story about Scott Peterson. And I'm, while the package is on, I'm like, oh my God, remember that press conference with Sharon Rocha when they found the body? And I remember exactly what she said. And I remember we broke into General Hospital and I was crying, and Kevin Keeshan came out and yelled at me for crying. And I turned to her and I said, yeah, you don't remember any of this because you were in middle school. And she says, actually, I was 5. 5.
Oh, that really.
And I literally I was speechless, because I was like, 5? When Sharon Rocha did that press conference, you were 5? I was on the air, right?
Well, so
it
is
really
there like,
puts it in perspective for you, though,
Yeah, it
of
really
how
does.
long exactly what you've been talking about. I remember the Scott Peterson story from when it happened, and I remember the details of how it happened and how it unfolded, and when they found her body. I can remember the time. I remember everything about it. So if I were to do that story, I would do it from my knowledge, the crocodile tears, the whole thing, the Amber Frey. I could go over it, and this is someone who just has to look it up and read it off of,
and that's where we're at in the business right
Yeah.
now.
And
That's
she's
where we're at.
wonderful, and I'm sure she's going to be a great reporter, and she is a good reporter, but that doesn't...
She doesn't have institutional knowledge.
She didn't live the story
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
We lived Scott Peterson, right?
I think one of the things that we all know in this room who've been in this business, it's difficult to leave broadcasting because it becomes a part of you, it becomes a part of who you are. So that brings me to the question of Dana King, because Dana King...
Oh, yes. This woman's got a story.
You have an amazing story. You had clearly a successful career in this business for a number of years. And a lot of people would say that you left at the top of your game. But you are doing something now that I think is a game changer as opposed to being the top of your game. You want to tell us what it's like to leave broadcasting and where you are right now in your space?
How'd I pivot? So 25 years as a broadcaster, and I knew that I didn't want to grow old on TV. I knew that when I said yes to that boss who wanted me to be a reporter. I had to go home and think about losing my anonymity and growing old on TV. And so I wanted always to retire at 50, and I was 52 and I got knocked out. And I had already started back at art school. I've always been an artist, and for 20-some years, putting together stories with sound and pictures and interviews satisfied that creativity in me until it didn't anymore. And so I went back to art school to get my MFA, and I was halfway through, and I took a weekend course with a master sculptor named Philippe Farreau. I couldn't even stay the whole weekend. I was so jacked. I went back to tell this man, I can't stay. I'm full. I don't have any more room to learn anything more. I just have to go do this. And I've been doing it ever since. And so thank you. So it's history. So the history that we told was living history, right? Now I tell the story of African descendants here in America so that kids can see themselves and their aunts and uncles and grandparents and touch the hair, and they see themselves and they know that their history is a part of American history, that we built this country, and that it's representation, no different than the representation that we provided by being on TV, right? But it's in a public space. People don't have to pay to go see it. If you come upon it accidentally or intentionally, the learning is the same. And my goal is that it will teach people to go and dig into the history of the of the person being honored with statuary, but also to dig into your own history and to figure out your family story. So I only create public art. I just finished a piece of Ida B. Wells for Columbia University, who was an amazing journalist who risked her life to catalog every individual who was lynched in this country and tell their stories. And she was almost lynched herself. They burned down her printing press. And so I tell stories like that in bronze. And the beauty of the bronze is that it lasts forever. And that means, I'm almost done, and that means that that history can be told generation after generation after generation. And it's a gift from God. I am just a vessel. I sometimes look at my work and I go, where did that come from? I don't know. So there is life after broadcasting.
Woo-hoo! And I
we
will
all
tell
have
you,
special gifts.
if you haven't are unfamiliar with Dana's work, please Google her.
Yes, Google
And
her.
one of the other things that I want to mention is the sculptures at the National Museum in Montgomery. Those are truly amazing.
I just want to follow up on Dana's story because I interviewed Dana for a radio program that I do on nonprofits. But we kind of went off script a little bit, and Dana was telling me about this project and the ancestry and the passion that she had. And at this time, your girls, the ladies, were in the park between the DeYoung and the Steinhardt Aquarium. Tell me the name? Monumental Reckoning. So I was so inspired that I took my 11-year-old granddaughter, who is not black, but I took her to see this sculpture so that she would be as inspired as I was by Dana's work. And her inspiration for history, that I wanted to pass that down to my granddaughter, that she could explore her passion through whatever vessels that she sees fit. So I'm very passionate about that.
Sue,
Because
what
Dana said, I'm sorry, I don't mean to continue on, but what Dana said about, I don't know where that came from, and this creativity that just flowed through her. I feel that when I'm on the radio, stuff comes out of my mouth that I do not know where it came from, and it's some sort of weird vessel God sent, and it happens to me all the time still. And whether I'm on TV or on the radio, I go sit down from what I've just said, and I'm like, where the hell did that? I didn't pre-think that. You know, I just ad lib that just came. So I understand that sent from whatever, and that I'm just here to. Bleh.
I want to stay on your page, Sue. I want to stay on your page, okay? Because we're talking about reinventing ourselves, and you're a perfect example of that. I know you told me right now you have 3 jobs, so tell us about how you're reinventing your career.
So it's happened several times to me. When I first started, it was full-time work. I mean, everything I did was full-time. And I got the brilliant and wonderful opportunity when I first started as a young 22-year-old girl at KFRC, which was like this huge, it was my station that I grew up listening to. It was huge. It transformed the way my passion for radio. And here I was as a kid working there, and I was not on the air at that point, but I had the privilege, the privilege of working with every department in the radio station: engineering, promotions, Joanne Green in public affairs. And I learned really fast a lot because it was such a big, full-scale radio station. It was a huge news department. Kenny Bastida came from our news department. Lots of Bay Area anchors, Vicky Liviakis. So I had the opportunity to learn from some of the best, and lots of different jobs. And I took that with me. And when I lost my big full-time job from KFRC years later, when I was on the air, I spent 20 plus years of my life on KFRC in various frequencies, whether it was 610 or 99.7, and then briefly at 106.9. that bittersweetly became KCBS. Anyway, soak it all in, and I've never turned down an opportunity to learn something. And to this very day, yes, I pivot. I've lost my big job. Back then, it was like a nice 6-figure job, and those aren't even available, at least in my world anymore. So I have 3 jobs now. I'm on 3 different radio stations in the Bay Area and 1 TV station, freelance at ABC7. And I especially the TV, I knew how to ad lib. And you anchor women that can read teleprompters, I don't know how you do it. It would be impossible for me to be natural and try to read a script. So what I do is ad lib. I ad lib weather, traffic, those are not scripted positions. As Roberta knows, you have to know what you're talking about. You have to be quick on your feet. And I've just pivoted that into whenever I could learn something new, and it served me. So now I have 8 grandchildren, 1 as of last night. Little baby boy, I'm going to forget his name now. Decker, like Desmond Decker. Decker is in Missoula, Montana. Of course, they had no idea who Desmond Decker was. You have to look it up, you guys. And I have the flexibility to spend time with them, was my point. So life is good.
You know what? I've been chomping at the bit the whole time.
Yeah,
so I just want to say, I am. I'm going to come right up here just for a second. So unlike almost everybody in this room, I was never fired from a radio job. I worked for 10 years at KLOK, and they were turning Spanish, and I wasn't good in that language. So I went over to K-Bay Radio, and I was there for 30 years. I'd never, they don't call it firing. They said I was let go because Sam Van Zandt was leaving, which meant I had to leave too. I cried hysterically on and off the air for 2 weeks. And my boyfriend, who I now live with, was so sick of it that he sent me to New York to stay with Mike Sugarman and Janice Wright for a week just to get rid of me. And they cured me. And I came back and I reinvented myself. But you know what? I feel everybody's pain in this room when you lose a job. But here we are. How about us? Can we give a round of applause to these fabulous women? My goodness. And you know what? I think we could be here through dinner time listening to their stories. But boy, if we learned something today.
Thank you all. Joanne, Carolyn, Fresca, Roberta, Miranda, Sue, Dana, Holly, and Jessica. You guys are all really amazing, and we have a little parting gift for you. Pardon? Well, Claudine, yes, but I already thanked her.
Claudine took her gift. She's gone.
She took hers with her. So you guys are really amazing. I'm sorry there wasn't more time because I know the stories are endless. I was standing here thinking about what I would say if I were sitting there and my head was exploding. So thank you all.
And the good
so
news
much.
is next year, next March, we will be doing another special theme for Women's History Month. We'll have some new panelists, maybe some of the same women, who knows? But hopefully you'll all be here. You'll all be here at the same place and the same time, and we'll do it all over again. It was fabulous today. You're wonderful.
Being here.
So I guess in TV they say this is a wrap. This is a wrap, everybody. Everybody drive safely home, and we'll see you in December.